Do you flinch when white men say aho?
I do.
Yeah.
Just because I've, been very fortunate to spend time with Lakota tribes and do traditional Nipi sweat lodges and things like that. And then when you really see, it's funny because I got to travel around with a bunch of native crew for a documentary I was working on. And it was so bizarre. It was like they'd forget I was there because all they do is spend time paying out white people with the ridiculous, nature of, what people were trying to do. Now, also, I have to say, I've been, again, fortunate to have a cultural experience. But a lot of people don't know how to be around mob. It's not that easy to even get in and get connected. So there's always going to be an awkwardness. And the bottom line is you're never really going to be in. They're family.
Yeah.
They're tight. They've got their program. They've got also their pain body, which you're never really going to understand. As much empathy as you have. This story runs thick. There's usually incarceration with family members. There's usually, there's big issues that they're dealing with on the download. So when we talk about cultural appropriation, I just went to them. They're the only people I've been having this conversation with. So traditional elders and people of, Guatemala, like Pedro Tata Cruz, who is the cacao shaman of Guatemala.
Right.
You ask him about these things, and they've got it's emotional for them. Their culture's been taken away. I remember seeing a ceremony that was happening in Byron, and it was at the community centre, and there was a cacao ceremony that started with, and the woman that was saying it, she was saying, and here we are drinking the cacao as the Mayans once did. It's a really confronting thing. And you feel like, wow, how do I do something?
How do I communicate?
How do I communicate? Because I want to talk to people. I want to connect with people and not judge them.
Yeah.
Not feel that right and wrong thing. I'm stepping more into that space of going, okay, obviously you're just not educated. You don't know there's still Mayans out there doing ceremonies. How can we have this conversation and I can still look at you and, and just be okay?
Yeah.
Not just like, another one.
Yeah.
So I suppose really what I'm saying is education, this conversation is, hopefully a part of where people can actually go, oh, actually, I might not do that. I might just look into something else.
And I think a big piece for me, when I moved to Northern Rivers in 2015 and I went to a men's circle, which was actually a really awesome men's circle, but that's the first time I had been around the aho thing, And I was like, oh, this feels a bit weird, very bunch of white dudes, and it's like, aho, brother. And like, it's actually now it's become, after a bunch of those circles, on some part I accepted it, although it always felt slightly weird for me. But just lots of little things like that, and the need to borrow other traditions. Really, one of the things I think it comes from is not having connection to your own stuff. And for me, a lot of my early journey was a lot to do with Eastern philosophy and Eastern religions, which, I, in all kinds of ways, appropriated the fuck out of, and I don't even know if it's always bad. I think it's a very gray area, and it depends on what we're defining as appropriation.
Like I said, there's a cultural appropriation and there's cultural appreciation.
You're right.
That line that gets crossed and gets blurrier. It's pretty clear around payment. Okay. So the film that I've been working on with a guy called Chief Arvel Looking Horse, he's a leader of the Great Sioux Nation, and he wrote a proclamation in 2003 requesting that non-native people stop selling their ceremonies. Now that proclamation's now been written up by some other tribes as well for their own. So the South American, the Guatemalans are writing up a proclamation as well, and they're stating that aspect. They're talking about their own people as well.
Yeah.
Because they don't sell ceremony. They don't sell regalia or ceremony in that way. Yeah. So that's a big topic, cultural
It's a big
appropriation.
topic. And for me, something that landed in the last couple of years really is this coming home to the Western esoteric tradition and essentially ceremonial magic and so on, and being like, oh, this is like, these threads have passed through my lineage. This is through like the Golden Dawn and stuff. This stuff happened in England, you know, and you could also argue there's cultural appropriation in that from Egypt and this and that and the other, but the kind of Wicca and Druidry and all that sort of stuff, which I'd been into as a kid and then kind of almost forgotten about, and found all the, you know, the Eastern philosophy thread and Buddhist and Tantric and Taoist sort of threads, and then bits of shamanic stuff and whatever. But what's really landed for me in the last couple of years is like, there is stuff that, because I less am looking through the cultural lens and more looking at all these things as like basically like operating systems, you know? And I got this sense that as a Caucasian Western human, you know, I've been practicing Buddhist style meditation for 20 years and I've achieved only a modicum of progress. You know, I've done okay, but I can feel it's almost like software that is not necessarily built for my psyche and my cultural conditioning. And as soon as I started to work with more Western esoteric style ceremonial magic and those kinds of practices, there was this sense of like, boom, you're going to get this so much more quickly because it's embedded in the Western worldview. And there was this, something started to land for me of like, this is why we're so hungry to steal everyone else's stuff. You know, we don't have a connection to our own mythic levels of reality, basically.
Yep.
And I mean, when Vikings came out, all my friends we were all like, oh my God. It was like, I felt so much more comfortable to plug into that mythos than trying to steal some Native Americans. So it's like, these legends are not really my legends, but this is passed through my DNA, you know, like the north of England, you know, we would go on school retreats to like York, where the Vikings first landed and pillaged and took over, and you know, put a lot of their DNA in that. It's like, this is woven in, and things like Celtic and Arthurian legends and wealth mythology. It's like, there's heaps of this stuff that sits in the background of my DNA. So I guess it doesn't really answer the cultural appropriation piece by itself, but I think just this recognition of our own lineage is a big help.
Yeah.